A very heartwarming welcome to all our global listeners out there. You have shown us so much of love and support, and thank you for that. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Partner Chronicles hosted by Zoho One. Today, we are here at the Sunshine Coast of Australia, and we have Kim with us from Dynamic Digital Solutions. Dynamic Digital Solutions have been a Zoho One partner for the past 5 years, and they have a lot of interesting implementation stories. Let us talk to Kim, have a wonderful and candid conversation, and get to know her well. Welcome, Kim, to the Partner Chronicles.
Thank you. It's nice to have you here on the Sunshine Coast.
Thank you so much, Kim. Tell us a little bit about who Kim is, who you are.
Yeah, so I'm actually a chartered accountant and a certified internal auditor, but I've been doing Zoho for a number of years. So a self-taught Zoho developer.
Okay. Before we get into everything Zoho, let me ask you this. What has been your path of discovery of Zoho, for Zoho? How did your life lead you to Zoho?
Well, actually, I started off working at one of the big four as, I guess, in the actual auditing side of things. And essentially, that was quite long hours. And
Okay.
my husband was working for one of the banks in Queensland.
Mhm.
And essentially, that basically took up a lot of our time.
Yeah.
And we ended up having kids, and it was actually quite hard to basically manage with both of us having full-time
Yeah.
jobs. So I actually, off the cuff, basically said to him, "Well, let's actually look at me opening up a family daycare." And he was really surprised by that. And so I opened up a family daycare. I got into looking after children. But after looking after children, I actually discovered that I couldn't find any systems.
Yeah.
And so initially, I went about using Zoho for my own benefit, and to actually just to find a program within the actual family daycare sector. Needless to say, after 1 year of actual searching,
Yeah.
it's like it just took up so much time and energy. But eventually, I came across Zoho. And then I started basically developing my own system and app. And through that, through the actual Zoho creator team, learned how to code.
Okay.
And I fell in love with coding.
That's very impressive, Kim.
So, yeah.
So when I hear you speaking about this, all I can think of is how difficult it must have been. But the fact that you overcame all this and you found Zoho, and like you said, firstly for something that you wanted to bridge a gap in what you were doing, and that's how you found Zoho Creator first, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, Tell us a little bit more about how Creator helped you with dynamic digital solutions and just the first few steps of how you built this company from ground up.
Yeah, so I started off with basically the actual family daycare side of things. And then when I moved to basically the Sunshine Coast, because my husband got a job offer here. So then out of the blue, I decided to open up my own business. And I decided to flip it on its head because it wasn't quite working that well in terms of the family daycare software that I was actually trying to sell. In fact, like I was failing horribly. Um, so I decided to flip it on its head and actually start offering other solutions
Yeah.
to clients because I'm used to, being in that auditing space and actually coming up with basically different solutions for much larger companies. So I did exactly that. And at first, there were hardly any clients on the Sunshine Coast. Because when you work on the Sunshine Coast, it's very much on an actual referral basis.
Okay.
So you can't just start marketing because it's not really going to get you anywhere. So people need to actually get to know you. So I actually joined one of the actual BNIs on the Sunshine Coast, and that way I actually started getting to know the people. And because there's so many different industries, when you work with the actual BNI, you get to learn about different actual businesses, but on a much smaller scale.
Okay.
So because they are more small to medium-sized businesses, and then I've obviously got the experience dealing with a lot larger businesses because I've actually worked with the actual Big Four. So that really allowed me to look at things a little bit differently, because I find that if you're a small business, you actually don't have money
Yes.
to waste. So you have to be efficient. And so that actually helped me basically deliver my Zoho One solutions. So by trying to implement something and then basically tailoring it for a client.
Wonderful. Kim, so that our audience is more connected to you, could you tell us what BNI stands for and what it essentially does?
So it's basically Business Network International. So you are essentially part of a chapter.
Okay.
So, and as part of that chapter, you will attend basically regular weekly meetings. So ours are kind of every single Thursday. And through that, you actually start to get to know each other. You also get to understand, what like other businesses are actually looking for, what their needs are, what their actual requirements are. So that in itself allows you to build in-depth knowledge about a business and what their needs are. So then you can actually start to offer basically solutions to that actual business. You can test it in a safe space, a safe environment where people are already open to actually communicating with you and to actually learning from each other. So yes, it is a networking space, but I have also used that networking space to practice what I say and what I actually do. So because sometimes when you actually meet with clients, you need to be able to adapt what you say and what you do, because not everything works for every single client. And during those actual meetings, that actually allowed me to do that. We also have basically one-to-ones.
Okay.
So during an actual one-to-one session, you have to sit down essentially with that client or member within the actual BNI, and you really get to truly understand what their business is all about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that perspective. And BNI sounds like it fits perfectly in the schema of things, like you said. Here, you can't just start doing marketing, it will get you nowhere. So, the feeling of community for you to get to know people. So, that's what BNI stands for you personally. Would that be a correct statement to make?
Yeah, I think BNI is about family business.
Okay.
And why I say that it's about family business is that a lot of the clients that I actually deal with, they operate as a family.
Okay.
And even so, when I deliver solutions, I operate as a family.
Okay. Wonderful. That's a very fresh perspective, Kim. And taking a thread off of that, tell me then, how does dynamic digital solutions stand apart in terms of culture, in terms of work, and the way your teams work? Could you throw some light on that, please?
Yeah, so that's been kind of an interesting one. So I have grown very quickly and I have tried to, just hire, employees, just like anyone would. And I didn't think it would be an issue. I've led big teams before, but I've really struggled because software developers don't always want to do low code. And that's been one of my biggest challenges for growth.
Okay.
So it's forced me to look at things a little bit differently. And to the extent that I'm no longer looking for software developers in my team.
Okay.
Yes, it's important to have those who can code, but it's equally important to focus on what a user sees And the people that do that best will actually be graphic designers and people who are actually bringing in people from a marketing perspective. So anyone doing basically website design, graphic design work and all that kind of
They're
stuff.
more visual.
They are very
more
visual.
approach. Yes.
And I actually find that when you build a system, it needs to be visually appealing to someone.
Yes.
So it is not just about being able to code. So because if you actually deliver a system that does not look visually appealing, people don't necessarily want to utilize it. So I have completely flipped everything on its head and actually, I guess, challenged the actual status quo by actually doing that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So, but it's actually learning what works and what actually doesn't work.
Give me, at the top of your head, give me an example that you've used this visual component with a client of yours or someone who knew and shifted their entire perspective of looking at things.
Yes, so there are a number of companies, one of which is the Nude Window, and we will get to meet them later on. But essentially, I think because Zoho CRM have the canvas views,
Yes.
you can essentially build anything that you want.
Okay.
So that has been a great starting point for us. To the extent that we can now sit around a boardroom table with our clients and actually design the software basically together. So we start off with a prototype.
Okay.
And we have a prototype, and then you bring in basically different teams and you sit with different teams around a table.
Okay.
And you actually design a solution together.
Sounds very organic. The way you're explaining it, I have a visual element in my head going on. That sounds beautiful, Kim.
Well, I think it's something that had to change personally in my business because I find that one of the hardest things is implementing a system.
Absolutely.
And because there are so many different people involved in the process. And especially when you're dealing with smaller and medium-sized businesses, first of all, they don't really know what they want.
Yes.
They don't know what they need.
Yeah.
And then you might start off with management. And management might have their list of actual requirements. And they think that their list of actual requirements will need to feed into what the team's list of actual requirements is. So you might start off like that, then you build a system.
Yes.
Then you get to implementing it with the team, and the team go, "What is this?" You know,
This is not
so
what I asked for.
this is actually not what we need.
Yes.
So so that's been one of the really frustrating points, but it's also been something that's forced me to sit back and think. And so, like, how are we actually going to solve this problem?
Absolutely. So just to elaborate on the implementation side of things, you're wearing a beautiful yellow dress today, the Zoho One colors. So let's get into it then. Yes, so Zoho One's implementation, as you know, can be complicated if not done well, which is where partners like you come in with so much of fervor and passion and experience. So taking a thread off of the previous conversation that we were just having, let's say there are a team of 25 people who are your clients, and there are a few people who are managers who are managing, say, managing the project. There are some people from operations, some are salespeople, some are marketing people, and more often than not, they are working towards a single goal of solving a problem, but they have a very different perspective of what they need to solve that problem.
Yes.
Tell me, how do you solve this challenge? This is a very practical challenge for an implementation, I feel.
So I think it is certainly about being more hands-on. So even you might build an actual solution, and that might be the actual prototype that you basically put together. But then you have to actually see that solution in practice.
Okay.
So very often we'll build something, we'll get the right people involved, and then we go into the workplace and we watch.
Okay.
And that is very important because if you don't observe what a person is doing, then you cannot actually see whether the system works in practice. So not everyone actually understands this. And when you mention it to them, they're not always open to it. So you kind of need to almost sell the concept. But it is really important because especially if you're a tradie, and you're on site and you actually need to do some work, you need to be efficient in what you do.
Okay.
So I will only understand as an actual developer whether that person's being efficient if I see them work.
Absolutely.
So because as soon as they are working outside of the system, that system is broken. It's not working. So, and some people do not actually communicate that. So things might actually be broken in terms of the system, but they have gone in there to basically install curtains. They've gone in there to install blinds.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the end of the day, they focus on their job, and that is installing curtains and blinds. They're actually not focused on whether they're using the tools correctly.
Yes.
Because they actually couldn't be bothered what tool they're using, really.
It's true. As long as it really works for them and solves the problem that they've been having.
Yeah, exactly. So like that part I do find is really important, and it also helps that you really understand the client's business.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about how did you come up with the name of Dynamic Digital Solutions? Does it have something to do with your personality?
No, not really. But what I have kind of done, since there's more of a focus on wearing my bright colors.
Okay. We are on point for this.
So you might see me in my yellow today. I might be in green the next day. But I guess it was more, first of all, from a marketing perspective.
Okay.
And so which is good. The only thing is when it comes to email, when you have to give someone an email address, the names are way too long. So, and then I started off with a kind of abbreviation of DDS, and that didn't quite work either because people don't really understand it.
Yes.
But if you have a look at my logo now, the first part is actually a signature.
Okay.
And that signature is because it's custom and it's basically unique to the client. And I guess when you look at dynamic digital solutions, that is what we build. We build a unique service offering for our clients, basically starting with an actual meeting where we work on what their actual strategy is and what their vision is, and then basically designing a system that actually meets their needs.
I'm so glad we got to talking about this because you really do have a strategy behind how it was named, and that's wonderful to listen to. Okay, Kim, tell me a little bit about your team culture, how you talk to your team, how more so take me through a day in your life at DDS.
So my team's a little bit different because it's mixed.
Yeah.
So most of my team's actually virtual.
Okay.
So what you'll find is if you walk into my office, you'll see people in my office. A lot of them are actually from basically BNI.
Okay. Okay.
So they might actually be either my clients. So I do work in the office with my clients sometimes. And clients come in here and they implement systems. But also as part of the actual BNI, you might find that there are people that are really good with hardware, people that are good with marketing, people that are good with basically videography, social media. All of these are key elements that fit into a Zoho One product, because Zoho allows you to bring in all of those elements. It allows you to bring in the HR elements.
Yes.
It allows you to bring in your marketing elements. It allows you to bring in your operations, your finance, and all that kind of stuff. So why not work in a mixed team environment? Because I'm not the one who has all the knowledge, but basically combined with my BNI team, I guess,
Yes.
I can offer that knowledge, I can offer that experience and that exposure. I do also have staff that essentially work for me, because I haven't quite managed to get it to work in basically Australia because of the fact that, some of the kind of employees don't really want to do low code.
Okay.
So I do have 2 in basically South Africa and
Okay.
1 staff member like in the actual Philippines.
Okay.
So I also have a actual virtual assistant who's based in basically Australia. So they handle all of the actual support type things.
Okay.
And that virtual assistant is actually an accountant, and they've actually worked in basically CRM systems
Okay.
and handled inquiries. So very mixed and a very diverse team.
Yeah. It really does sound like a very collaborative and community-driven team setup that you've got going on. It's the first I've heard of it. Thank you for sharing that with us. Let's take a look at few of your clients.
Mhm.
Let's pick one off the top of your head and something or for someone you did an interesting implementation setup. I would love to hear that from you.
Yeah, so I guess one of our unique selling points is the fact that I'm a chartered accountant and a certified internal auditor and a self-taught Zoho developer. And so I guess that in itself allows us to build products that are a little bit differently. A little bit different, sorry. So if you look at basically the nude window, so they do, blinds and curtains and all that kind of stuff. So one of their challenges was to be able to quote on the job.
Okay.
So if you think about it, lots of measurements,
Yes.
lots of different fabrics, so which can actually make it rather complex. There's also lots of different products. So what we did is we obtained an understanding of their actual requirements, and then using basically Zoho Creator, we managed to build a quoting system.
Okay.
But at the same time, also managed to build in a manufacturing specifications document
Okay.
as well. So I guess you would easily go from quote to acceptance to invoice and then into your actual requirements. So so that the actual manufacturer knows what to manufacture when it comes to curtains, and then when it comes to installation, like what are those installation requirements. So that was one of the things, I guess, that we built that's a little bit different.
Okay, so could you also, as we are talking about this, along with Zoho Creator, were there more products you used, not just for customization, but just the entire business process flow? Could you just take me through it in a linear way so
Yeah.
that it's more clear to our audience there?
Yeah, so I guess when we start building a system, every system we build starts with a CRM.
Okay.
So, because I think that's absolutely critical in terms of being able to run a business. Because if you want to provide a client-centric solution, then you need to be able to see where all of your information is actually coming from. So first of all, when you look at a kind of inquiry, where are those inquiries coming from?
Yes.
So it might be the phone, it might be, basically the actual website, they might walk into the store. So
Yeah.
it all starts with that process and understanding that process. And then it's going to move into basically maybe a quote.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and like in this case, we have had to use Zoho Creator
Okay.
because a standard quoting system is too hard to utilize.
Okay.
Because of the fact that I guess quoting is very specialized and
Okay.
it actually requires skill. So what we wanted to do with this client was try to create a system that's more a checklist.
Yeah.
So that when you actually create a quote using a checklist type system, that anyone can really quote.
Mhm.
And that you don't need to have the training and the background.
Okay.
And that's, I guess, something different, and things where you actually need to really be able to sit down with a client and understand what they need.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. That sounds really interesting and unique. Tell me a little bit about your experience of being a Zoho One partner for the past 5 years. Take us through the journey of from when you started with Creator and Zoho One, and uh, highlight some challenges that you've had to face with Zoho One implementations.
Yeah, I guess so. With some of the Zoho products, like there are different apps, but they do things in an actual similar way.
Yeah.
I guess so. It can be confusing because you'll actually start off with one product, and then you'll think, well, that's actually the one to utilize. But then that doesn't necessarily work that way when you actually get into the actual detail. So I guess as a kind of example is when you're wanting to collect information, there's Zoho Forms.
Yes.
There might be Zoho Creator. There might be Zoho Checkout.
There's
So
forms in Zoho CRM.
yes, and
There's
there's
web
forms.
forms.
There is also web
Yeah.
forms in basically
Yes.
Zoho CRM. So which is actually the best one to use? And so a lot of people don't really know that there's all those types of
Yes.
forms. And then they don't actually really understand which ones work best in their actual situation. So I guess what I've done is, because I am selling Zoho One, I've had to make sure that I actually understand what the different apps offer.
Okay.
So I might not necessarily use them all the time, but I at least know what they offer and why I would use them and in which use case I would
Yes.
actually utilize them.
So let me understand this more. So when a customer comes to you, you first understand their business processes.
Yeah.
And let's say the solution can be provided by using Zoho CRM.
Yes.
At which point do you suggest Zoho One for them?
So when they need to use more than one app, and most customers will need to use more than one app.
That's wonderful. Um, Zoho One is called the operating system for business.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to share some thoughts on that? Do you agree? Do you have a different perspective? And also, maybe how does the market really look at it, the operating system for business? Does that convey what Zoho One actually does?
I do think that it's the operating
Okay.
system for business, very, very much so, because if you look at how a business operates, they have various elements. So you need to have all of those different components to actually run a business. And as a client, you might actually start off with having more marketing needs.
Okay.
So then you might just start off with an actual CRM, and it might just be really basic, and you're actually collecting some basic information because you're actually trying to drive sales in your business.
Absolutely.
So once you have been able to generate the sales in your business, you might have more of an operations focus.
Yes.
So I think what's really great about Zoho One is that it grows with you as a business. So whether you're really small, because I mean the price is just mind blowing. So to pay $65, per kind of employee, like for the full suite of apps, like for me, that's just a no-brainer.
What are or what could be, for other partners and our listeners out there, some do's and don'ts while starting with Zoho One? When could a partner help? And how much of Zoho One can they explore in one go? And when can they, take a pause, consult the partner, and then move on to it?
Yeah, so I guess as a partner, what you need to first of all do is identify who your client base is.
Okay.
So, like, what are your clients' needs? Why are they coming to you in the first place? And then also kind of identifying the apps that you want to work with, because you can't be an expert in everything. So it's actually knowing what you are good at
Yes.
and knowing what you would like to work towards, and then actually seeking the time and the training to actually work on those other areas later down the track.
Wonderful. Uh, with our discussions, uh, we kind of saw that you have a lot of clients from the manufacturing sector. So, does Zoho One fit a certain vertical industry? Do you think that it's good for SMEs, MSMEs, enterprise levels? Do you have some thoughts on that, Kim?
I think it works for any business, whether you're big or small, to be honest. I think the actual small ones struggle a bit more because I think there's just too many apps for
Yes.
them to understand where to actually start. But I guess that's where essentially begin comes in.
Yes.
You know, that would actually probably be a good, starting point for a smaller business. I don't personally have any clients that use essentially Begin
Okay.
because mine are larger. So normally I deal with clients who have 5 employees up.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. What's the biggest number of users implementation you've taken up, if I may ask?
Yeah, so at this stage, I like haven't gone above 50.
Okay.
So, and ideally, I would like to keep my implementations under a kind of 100.
Okay. Cap.
So
Cap.
yeah, so like I could,
Mm.
probably put myself out there
Yes.
to do larger jobs or whatever, but at the end of the day, I feel that that's the right fit for me and my business and my size of business.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very thoughtful of you, Kim. So before we wrap up, tell me three of your favorite things about Zoho One.
3 of my favorite things about Zoho One. Um, yeah, I like that it's so flexible. And that you could literally build anything that you want, whether you're a big or a small business.
Three things.
Oh, 3 things. I like that it is built on a low code platform.
Okay.
So I guess because that just like anyone can be a coder. Because if they actually really wanted to learn how to code, they could code, and you don't have to be an expert in coding. And you could start off like in a really basic way, and you can actually build it over time. And my third one is really the price.
Okay. Okay.
So,
I should have said apart from the price. All right. It's completely okay. It has been wonderful having a conversation with you. Thank you for inviting us and sharing your time and your story with us. Thank you so much, Kim.
yeah, no worries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.